Today on the I Have No Idea What to Call This Show Says podcast, I am going to be discussing the United States Tik Tok ban, comparing the Lewitt LCT440 to the Lewitt Ray, using a face mask for a pop filter, and other stuff too, so go ahead and stick around. Let's start with the big ticket item, and this is something that I never imagined would actually happen. It's pretty insane. President Joe Biden signed a bill which will ban TikTok. What does this mean? Does this mean that as of today, you can no longer access the app? Does it mean that in 9 months or 12 months, if you have the app on your phone, you can no longer access it? No. What it means is that ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, has 9 to 12 months to sell the company, to sell TikTok to a US-owned firm. After that, it's not likely that they will have some kind of firewall that will ban access to TikTok, but what is most likely to happen is that TikTok will no longer be allowed in app stores within the US. So if you already have TikTok downloaded in 9 to 12 months, if the ban does go through, chances are you will not lose access to it. But if you don't have the app downloaded on your phone, then you wouldn't be able to download it directly from any of the app stores like Google or Apple, and you likely wouldn't get any kind of security updates unless there's some kind of workaround, which I'm sure there is, which would allow you to sideload these apps onto your phone and get around the ban. I imagine that is probably a thing. But as I mentioned, this is just wild because I never thought the US government would go this far. I never thought the US government would actually implement a ban of a social media app. The reason it boggles my mind is for years, I have heard shock and outrage against the Chinese government because the Chinese government bans certain US-based social media apps and search services and just US companies in general. I hear outrage and shock about that. Yet here we are. Pretty wild to see. Maybe a little bit hypocritical, methinks. And good luck to who was ever tasked with enforcing this ban. Good luck with that. I am sure people will not find a workaround at all. Just absolutely insane to see this actually happening. Doesn't make any sense. That's all I'm going to say about the political side of things, but what should you as a creator in the United States do to prepare for this? First thing you should be doing is going into TikTok and backing up all of your content in case the ban does go through and in case there is some kind of actual enforcement which disallows US citizens from accessing it. So that is my first suggestion. Going in and downloading all of the videos you have uploaded to TikTok so that you have copies. Do not expect it to always be available to you, and in case TikTok does go away, you should have copies of all the hard work that you have put into it. The next piece of advice that I have is something that I have been recommending for years at this point. It doesn't matter what platform you use. It doesn't matter what type of content you create. Whether you're a YouTuber, a TikToker, an Instagrammer, a tweeter, a Viner, a Musical.ly, a Tumblr, it doesn't matter. Create your own space online that you own and that you control and direct people there. Do not rely solely on the existence of other people's platforms. Do not expect YouTube and TikTok to always be there. So what I am suggesting is you get your own website, you get your own domain, and direct people there and give people a reason to visit there. For example, I don't just host podcasted reviews on YouTube. I also upload higher quality audio to podcastage.com, and I have links to that website, to those blog posts in the description of every single review. So not only am I bringing awareness to a space online that I own and that I control and that very few people have access to, but I am also giving an incentive to people who want additional content or want additional value. If they don't want to hear these demos of audio gear with the compression that YouTube inevitably puts on videos, they can go to podcastage.com to get that higher quality audio. You, as an online content creator, ought to have that type of space for your content, for your home base. You don't necessarily need to host all of your content on your own servers because that is likely to be prohibitively expensive, especially if you make video content, but at least creating blog posts and embedding a video on your own website is a good idea. That way, if you do get banned from service X, Y, or Z, your blog posts still exist, and all you would need to do is re-upload that content to a new service and then re-embed those video files in your existing posts. That's my main advice for you if you create TikTok videos and you live in the States. I am sure that contacting your representative and letting them know your thoughts on this ban would also be helpful. Maybe if you rely on TikTok to support yourself, let them know that you are going to be losing your income. They are killing a small business by supporting this ban if they do. So let them know what your thoughts are on this. I am sure that would be helpful as well. But there are still 9 to 12 months for this to be resolved, although I do still think you should be doing this preparatory work, backing up all the content on TikTok and creating the space online that you own and making your audience aware of it. And don't get me wrong, this is not exclusive to TikTok creators. I have been screaming this for years. I will scream it for years more. If you make content online, create your own space online and direct people there. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, any of these services can disappear tomorrow. They can go out of business. Any of these services can change their TOS. And when that happens, maybe you violate that TOS and then you get banned, you lose access to your audience, and nobody knows where to find you. So you should be doing all of this preparatory work, backing up your content, and directing people to a space that you own, even when there isn't tumultuous waters going on. There's not ripples going on. So I wish you luck if you're a TikTok creator. I hope you survive this. I hope there is no huge impact on your income. I hope you're still able to support yourself, and that is it. I am not going to go into the politics of it, but yeah, bold move, Cotton. Let's see if this pays off. What a dumb thing to do. Yeah. Good idea, I guess. Really popular decision there, pal. Okay, that is it for the news. Let's jump to what you had to say. And the first comment comes from P.W. Fenton. He says, I own a Lewitt LCT440 Pure, and I swear your new Lewitt Ray sounds better. I don't believe it's the same microphone. The Ray sounds silkier, smoother to me. Do you have a 440 to compare it to? PW, thank you very much for the comment and the question. To answer your question, I have two microphones set up. I have the Lewitt Ray, the Aura technology is turned off, and I have the Lewitt LCT440, which does not have any kind of filtering or processing turned on. Both microphones are running into the Universal Audio X8 directly. The Lewitt Ray has gain set at 41 dB, while the gain on the LCT440 is set at 33 dB, and I level match these as close as I possibly can at that stage. It seems as though they're pretty similar. The Ray maybe will have to come back a half decibel, but it should be pretty similar in terms of level. But up until now, I will have been switching back and forth between them, and if you're just listening, I apologize. I won't have any kind of buzz or clicking to indicate when I switch, but if you're watching, I will have the recording information in the lower third. But for those who are just listening, here is how the Lewitt Ray sounds. This is the Lewitt Ray. Jumping over to the LCT440, here is how the 440 sounds. Back again on the Lewitt Ray, here is how this sounds, and then another sample on the LCT440. Looking at my levels, I think I set my gain a bit too high for both of these microphones. I don't think I clipped, but it is going to be a very close call. There you go. That is the comparison between the Lewitt Ray and the LCT440, which are supposed to have the same capsule, but obviously I did clip there, but obviously they have different electronics. And you tell me, do the internal electronics make the microphone sound different? There you go, PW. Hopefully that was helpful. Let's go to the next question. Next, we have a comment from Fred Overflow. He says, question, are medical masks worn effective pop filters? Fred, thank you very much for the comment and the question. I am currently doing something that I was hoping I would never ever have to do again in my entire life. That is wear a face mask. I am also doing something else I never thought I would do in my entire life, recording a podcast with a face mask on. But this is how we are going to determine if a face mask can be an effective way or an effective pop filter. First thing I will point out, the tone of my voice and recording is very different. Here is how it sounds with the mask on. Here is how it sounds without the mask on. It sounds so much better without the face mask covering my mouth. Much more clarity, just much more natural sounding. But let's see how this face mask does at blocking plosives. First, without the face mask up, please provide pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. Please provide pizza pronto. And now with the face mask, please provide pizza pronto. Please bring pizza pronto. Please provide pizza pronto, pals. I would say that does a pretty good job at plosive rejection, but simultaneously, it feels as though I am suffocating. So I guess you're giving some things up, like the ability to breathe oxygen, but fewer plosives, I guess. So the question was, are medical masks worn effective pop filters? I suppose so. A medical mask like this can function as an effective pop filter, but it makes it difficult to breathe, which is important when you are speaking, especially during a podcast or anything. And it also affects the tone of the recording tremendously. It sounds unnatural. It just sounds bad. So I would not recommend doing this as a pop filter, plosive reduction technique. This is silly. And hopefully I will never ever have to wear a mask ever again in my life, because this reminds me how much I hated all of that. That was terrible. Flashbacks, flashbacks, flashbacks. That is enough of that question, Fred. I hope that was helpful. Let's go to the next comment. Next, we have a comment from Attaboy Brad, and he says, it's a little ironic that your high-value items are also all luxury purchases in terms of being redundant with your phone, and it sounds like used as secondary or tertiary devices within their respective categories, Kindle and Watch at least. To be clear, I don't disagree that they can also be high value and would never begrudge investment in the exact right tool for a particular job, but I think you'll appreciate the tension between the frugal and aesthetic impulses in this case. Brad, thank you very much for the comment. This is such an interesting take, and I had a lot of fun thinking through this. I never really considered the fact that purchasing redundant items might be considered a luxury, especially if those items that are redundant are incredibly affordable. For example, a G-Shock is $40, an MP3 player is $25, a Kindle is $100 or $80, an SM57 is $100, yet all of those items are essentially redundant because all the tasks they perform are done by your phone. Your phone has a watch, it has a clock, it has an e-reader, it has MP3 music playback, it has audible playback, it has a microphone in it, it has a camera in it. So that is a very interesting take. I understand the argument completely. I spent a ton of money on my phone. It is very effective at a lot of things. It does have the camera, it has a microphone, it has podcast playback, it has e-reader functionality, it has Audible audiobook playback, music playback, streaming, video, movies, TV, pretty much anything and everything that I need is handled by my phone. So I technically do not need to have a Kindle. I do not need an MP3 player. I don't even need headphones because the phone has speakers. I don't need physical books. I don't need a wristwatch. I don't need any of it. So in this thought process, or in this thought experiment, or I guess in this paradigm that you're setting up, yes, all of these items would be luxury. But at the same time, the reason I'm going to push back on you a little bit is, what is the most valuable commodity that each of us have? Our time. So if these single-purpose items allow me to waste less of my time and be more focused on what is important to me, then I don't necessarily view them as a luxury, especially considering they are relatively affordable. As I mentioned, a G-Shock is $40 to $50, an MP3 player is $25 to $30, a Kindle is $100, something like that. Now, if these items were made of solid gold, if this MP3 player wasn't $25, but it was $2,500, I would be much more obliged to agree with you completely. But being that it is relatively affordable, in many cases less than 1 hour's wage to acquire this, and it allows me to be more focused, waste less of my time, have more free time to focus on what I want to, have far less distractions, I think that is insanely valuable, and I guess maybe still a luxury, but a worthwhile luxury, and not an extravagant luxury. Also, maybe I'm taking this too far and being a bit extreme here, but I think this mindset could very easily lead to you living an insanely austere life. Thinking through it for myself, it would pretty much lead to me having an empty home. And on one hand, that is super duper appealing because I am drowning in microphones and they are a burden to me. But on the other hand, I live a pretty monastic life as it is. And living a more monastic life, a more austere life where you already don't go out to eat, you don't buy any fancy foods or anything. Yeah, that would be pretty wild. But yeah, as I mentioned, the phone has a camera and a microphone, so I would be getting rid of my DSLRs. I'd be getting rid of all of my microphones. There is daylight outdoors. There are windows that are blocked, so I'd be getting rid of my lights. You can edit on your phone, video and audio. So no need for a computer. You can upload all of that content directly to your phone. So again, no need for a computer. You can use the speakers in the phone or cheap earbuds that come with the phone. If your phone has a headphone jack, something like that. You don't need fancy headphones. You can access books, music, movies, TV, all at the library. And a lot of them have online services, so you're not having any physical media, physical books, physical CDs, anything like that. No need for a wristwatch because there's a time on your phone. You have note-taking apps on your phone, so get rid of your paper, your pens, your pencils. No need for any of that. So on one hand, it's amazing how much technology, how many tasks these smartphones are capable of accomplishing and accomplishing effectively. But at the same time, with all of that function at your fingertips, it is so easy to become distracted by these things, and that is what appeals to me about these single-use items. I made a video, a podcast episode, years ago at this point, I think, talking about this. And just a side note, Denki, D-E-N-K-I, recently made a video talking about this exact topic, why he replaced his phone with an iPod. And he was talking about replacing smartphones, which are so distracting, with single-use items so that he can appreciate what he's doing a lot more. So although I understand your argument about redundant items being luxuries, I think that if they allow us to be more focused and waste less time, they may be luxuries, but I think they are worthwhile luxuries, and in many cases, they are not extravagant luxuries. If we're talking about fancy watches, yes, I agree 100% it's a luxury item. If we're talking about some kind of $10,000 microphone that you use for a podcast and nobody notices, yeah, that's a luxury. Using a U87 on a podcast, that's a luxury. I admit that. Using a $1,000 audio player DAP, yeah, that's a luxury. But a I just have a hard time squaring a $25 MP3 player as a luxury item. But I understand the argument. And I think a lot of the time, if these luxuries allow us to be more effective with our time, more efficient with our time, waste less of our time, and be more focused, I think they are totally worthwhile. But thank you very much for that comment. I loved that pushback, and I loved having to think through this and try to understand my position a bit better. I think you may have won the debate. This wasn't a debate. I'm not some kind of debate bro. I don't have the mind capacity. Proven by the fact that I just said mind capacity. Nobody has ever said that in the history of the world. I don't have the mental fortitude to be a debate bro. But I think, yes, the argument that they are luxuries technically is probably true. Thank you very much, Brad. Appreciate you. Next, we have a comment from MEI Studio New York, Pags. He says, my studio has so much gear that is decades old that we still use. That's real value gear. My Digi 192s are still running. I have mic pre's and compressors from the late 90s and early aughts. I have mics from as far back as the 1930s. An almost 100-year-old piece of gear is more than incredible value in my opinion. That audio still comes out of it at all is impressive. The fact that it still has decently rich tone is even more so. Modern tech, not really much of a gadget person, but I do have an iMac from before 2010 that's still chugging along just fine since I put Linux on it. It's now used as a research machine to just go on the net and play music and such, but it's still serving a purpose and isn't taking up space in a landfill. Pags, thank you very much for the comment, and thank you for sharing the items that you find to be high value. I agree completely that audio gear is some of the highest value gear out there, some of the highest value tech that we can invest in, but I intentionally left off audio gear from my list because for me that would have been a bit obvious. I didn't want last week's episode to just be a follow-on to pretty much every single podcastage video, microphones, 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 and on this second channel, microphones, 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 more microphones. I wanted justification to talk about the non-audio input side of things because I very rarely do. So that is why I left off audio input gear, why I left off preamps and microphones and interfaces and cameras, all of that stuff that I use for podcasting and YouTube. But I do agree. One of the highest value items that I have is the Shure SM57. And if Ricky from Audio Haze is listening, I know he just jumped up out of his chair screaming, "Yahoo! Finally! Bandrew didn't mention the SM7B. He mentioned the SM57. The reason this is one of the highest value pieces of equipment that I have, this is one of the oldest. I got this 14 or 15 years ago, and I paid the massive sum of $0. I won this in a remix competition along with a Blue Icicle audio interface. And if I don't call that high value, nothing is. A free microphone, or I guess a microphone for exposure? Is that kind of what it is? Hey, do all this work that's extremely valuable and we'll give you a $100 microphone. But even if I bought this 15 years ago for $100, the fact that it still functions the same as it did day one is incredible. Because how many modern pieces of technology have that kind of lifespan? I don't think there is much, especially in the digital age. It seems all of the items that do have that kind of lifespan are mainly analog. Analog headphones, microphones, analog preamps. When you get to interfaces, those are much more digital and have a shorter life. The higher end stuff may maintain a lot more support, driver support, high enough quality components that they do not become obsolete as quickly. But I can guarantee you a fully analog preamp is going to be relevant and functional and non-obsolete much longer than a digital audio interface. But I agree with you completely. Audio gear is some of the highest value stuff that is available on the market, and I have posted about this and spoken about this many times over the last couple of years. The reason I love covering audio gear is because it's so counter to modern technology where you have this planned obsolescence. You'll get 6 years of use out of a $1,400 phone, then they stop updating it. But when I cover an SM57 7 years ago, the video may suck by today's standards, but the information, the demos, the tests, the conclusions are all still relevant because that microphone is still being manufactured, the microphone still performs well. So when I look at the amount of time that I spend making these videos, I view that as a really good investment of my time because years on, a lot of those videos are still relevant. On top of that, I feel good because I am covering a lot of gear, not all the gear I cover, but a lot of the gear that I cover has a long life. So I'm not promoting or advocating for gear that leads to overconsumption. I'm advocating and covering gear that will give you decades of use and in the long term, give you a very low cost per use. If I spent $100 on this SM57, 15 years on, the cost per use would probably be a penny. If I was talking about the U87, I need to still use that a lot more to get the cost of use down. U67 even more so, but I think you get the point. You're buying these high quality items that last you a lifetime if they're treated well. And I feel good about covering that type of gear as opposed to stuff that is much more disposable or that has planned obsolescence or just a shorter life, like a smartphone, like a tablet. These are all items that I do get value out of, but are undeniably, they have a shorter lifespan, but are also more disposable, for lack of a better term, compared to something like the 57. The SM7B, sit down now, Ricky. I mentioned it, one of my all-time favorites, which I do love more than the 57. I had to throw that in there as I have music start playing in the background, just this click track that I've been practicing to, just driving me crazy. I put the microphone on the play button on my keyboard. That's why that happened. Been practicing to a click a lot, and the click is a cowbell. I don't think I had anything else to say because I lost my train of thought. Thanks a lot, cowbell. All right, that is it for what you had to say. Now let us jump to the value for value segment of this show because this is a V for V podcast. What that means is I do not put this show behind a paywall. I do not put ads on it. I just put the show out there and I try to make it as valuable as possible. And if you get any value out of it, I just ask you return that in whatever format you are able, whether it be time, talent, or treasure. Today, we are focusing on the treasure portion of that value. And number one comes from Greg LG. He sent in this twice again. I hope this wasn't a mistake, but he sent in $13.99 Canadian and says, let's keep it ad-free. Greg, thank you very much for the 14 or I guess 28 Canadian dollars. I really do appreciate it. And everybody who enjoys this show ad-free, I am sure they appreciate your contribution as well. Thank you so much, good sir. I really do appreciate you. And next we have €25 from TechMed Raina Richter. He says, Danke. This was a nice one again. I support those who said that this is a personality-driven channel. It's clearly a fact-based channel as well, though. Raina, thank you so much for the €25, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on whether this is a personality or a fact-driven channel. I think that's a very good way to put it. It's a bit of both. I do share mainly, or I try to share mainly facts, but in many cases I go on these insane tangents, and it's a hang on if you can kind of situation. Are you gonna make it through it to get to the facts and the information you're here for? Maybe. So I appreciate it so much. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and thank you very much for the €25. I really do appreciate you. That is it for this week's episode. I really appreciate you coming by. I understand that you could do anything with your time, so the fact that you choose to come by, hang out with me, it really does mean the world to me, and I hope you got some value out of my insane ramblings. Were you able to hang on? Did you throw your hands up and say, wee? Like one of my favorite videos where, not Kurt Cobain, what is his name? Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins rides a roller coaster. It is one of the dumbest things I have ever seen, but it makes me laugh every single time. Look that up. Billy Corgan rides a roller coaster. If it doesn't make you laugh, I don't know what to tell you. One of the funniest videos online. I do have a few Ask Bandrew, maybe it's just one Ask Bandrew to do. It is from Midnight Wolf in the Discord server, but it is going to take quite a bit of testing, and it's a bit difficult to find hours upon hours to do that type of testing of like Discord mobile for an Ask Bandrew when I spend 25 hours, 30 hours a week on the main channel, and then I just spend all Sunday doing this episode or doing this podcast. So I will have some Ask Bandrews coming up. It's just going to take a little bit, so I apologize. Okay. That is it for this week. I appreciate you so much coming by. I love you with the bottom of my heart, not with just the bottom, but with all the heart of me. I really need to get my brain checked because I think something is wrong. My inability to speak after a decade of practice, it's baffling. The amount of times that I screw up and fumble over my words and mix up words, you know, if Joe Biden ever needs a stand-in, I think I would be good at it. I think I would be very good at it. That's how I sound when I don't edit. The editing and the processing makes me sound like this. But all the other time, I love the microphone. The microphone, I don't. This is not valuable. I love you. I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye. Whoa, whoa. Boop.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.